I was locking the front door when I saw him, just standing there beside my car like he'd been waiting. A boy, 10, maybe 11, skinny arms folded over a navy windbreaker too thin for a March morning in Portland. I paused, keys in hand. He didn't move, didn't smile. He just said, in a voice too calm to be playing a joke, "Your husband is hiding in your trunk." For a second, I didn't react. My brain stalled between disbelief and alarm, trying to place him. Was he a neighbor's kid? Did he go to school nearby? Then the words landed again, and something tightened in my chest. "What?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. "What did you just say?" He pointed. "He climbed in when you were inside. Tall man, gray coat. I saw him." Then he took a few steps back. No expression, no explanation. Just turned and ran across the parking lot like some ghost in the early light. I stood frozen beside my old Honda Accord, suddenly aware of how quiet the street was. The snow from last week had melted, leaving wet slush pooled along the curb, the kind that soaks through the soles of your shoes. The air smelled like car exhaust and something damp and metallic, and for a second I felt dizzy. What kind of prank was this? Marcus was at work. He had a meeting with subcontractors across town. He'd told me over coffee just this morning. I'd watched him put on his tie, grab his thermos, kiss my cheek. He couldn't be in my trunk. Still, I circled the car slowly, peeking through the windows as if I might catch a glimpse of a foot or a coat, sleeve hanging over the back seat. Nothing. The trunk was shut, locked, just like I left it last night. I should have walked away. I should have laughed, gotten in, and driven to the office like any other Wednesday. But my fingers hovered over the trunk button on my key fob. I pictured myself opening it, finding it empty, and then having to explain to my coworkers why I was late because a random kid told me my husband was hiding in my car? Ridiculous. And yet, I didn't open it. I sat in the driver's seat with my bag beside me, heart fluttering with something I couldn't name. Embarrassment? No, it was deeper than that. Something colder. I kept hearing the boy's words. "Your husband is hiding in your trunk," repeating like a movie line stuck on loop. My fingers trembled on the wheel. I drove off anyway. The drive to Kent and Rayleigh CPA services took 20 minutes. Usually, I played the morning news to distract myself from traffic, but today the radio stayed off. My eyes flicked again and again to the rearview mirror, even though I knew it was absurd. There was no one back there. Marcus and I had been married 7 years. He was older, steady, successful, logical to a fault. The kind of man who booked our taxes 3 months in advance and checked tire pressure before road trips. He wasn't the kind of man who hid in trunks. At least, I didn't think he was. When I finally parked behind the office building, I still hadn't shaken the feeling. I stared at the trunk button again, then climbed out, walked around the car, and opened the back. Nothing. Just the emergency kit, a worn blanket, and my grocery tote. No gray coat. No Marcus. I exhaled long and shaky. Ridiculous. Why had I let some strange kid rattle me like this? Work was uneventful. Just spreadsheets and coffee and the hum of Deborah's voice in the next cubicle. I didn't mention what happened. It felt too weird to say out loud. That evening, I got home early. I was still taking off my coat when I heard movement in the kitchen, the sound of cabinet door and a drawer sliding shut. I froze. Then Marcus stepped out holding a dish towel, wearing jeans and his favorite Oregon State sweatshirt. "Oh," I said, "you're home." "Yeah," he smiled, drying his hands. "Meeting got canceled last minute." My stomach dropped. "I thought you were at the site all day." "Was supposed to be," he said casually, "but they pushed it to Friday. Figured I'd beat traffic for once." He kissed my temple and walked past like nothing was off. But I couldn't move. I just stood there, my boots still wet from the lot, my coat half slipping from my shoulder. Marcus hadn't been at work all day. He'd been home. And I didn't know what scared me more, that a strange boy had said my husband was in my trunk, or that for the first time since we got married, I didn't believe Marcus when he smiled. Not even for a second. Dinner that night was pasta with lemon and shrimp, my favorite. Marcus moved around the kitchen with the same ease he always had, pouring wine, adding just the right amount of chili flakes, humming some old Fleetwood Mac song under his breath. He looked relaxed, normal, almost too normal. I sat at the counter, watching him chop parsley like nothing had happened, like he hadn't lied about an entire workday. My appetite was gone, but I forced myself to eat. Pretend everything's fine. That's what you do when something cracks. You patch it with silence and routine and soft nods across the table. He talked about weekend plans, about how we should finally take that drive to the coast, about possibly repainting the bedroom. I nodded, smiled. I might have even laughed at some point. But inside, something had shifted. It wasn't dramatic, like a bomb going off. It was quieter than that, like a floorboard warping beneath your feet. When we went to bed, Marcus held me like always, arm draped across my side, his body warm and familiar. I stared at the ceiling long after his breath turned rhythmic. I kept thinking about that damn boy, his voice, his certainty, the way he said, "Your husband," like he knew something I didn't, something I refused to see. The next morning, I parked a little farther from the building than usual. I told myself it was to get extra steps in, but really I didn't want Marcus to recognize the exact parking spot. If he had been there, if that wasn't just paranoia whispering through my ribs. The day was quiet. No strange boys. No gray coats. Just the usual. Payroll updates, phone calls from slow clients, Deborah humming show tunes off key. But then something odd happened. Marcus texted around lunchtime. "Marcus, 12:47 p.m. How's work going? You have lunch with Deb again today?" He never asked those things. Not in the middle of the day. Not with that specific tone. I stared at the message for a while before replying. "Me, yeah. Usual Wednesday. You?" "Marcus, boring. Meetings all morning. I miss you." I held the phone a little longer than necessary. Read those words twice. "I miss you." Sweet, right? But something in me recoiled. It felt planted, performed, as if he knew I was on edge and was trying to fill the space with something tender, something rehearsed. I looked up at Deborah, who was reading her lunch order receipt. I opened my mouth, almost told her everything. The boy, the lie about the meeting, the silence last night that felt like glue holding a cracked vase. But I didn't. Instead, I asked if she wanted to go get coffee. We left the office and crossed the street to Oak and Brew, the tiny cafe with burn espresso and great muffins. We sat by the window. The sun was beginning to slip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. Deborah rambled about her latest online date, some guy who lied about his height and brought a fanny pack. I smiled, trying to keep up. Then she asked, "Everything good at home? You seem a little, I don't know, quiet." I nodded. "Yeah, just tired." She gave me a look, the kind only people who've worked next to you for years can give. But she didn't press, just said, "Tell Marcus to take you somewhere nice this weekend. You both deserve a break." That night, after Marcus fell asleep, I stared at the ceiling again. But this time I didn't stay still. I got up, padded barefoot across the floor to my work tote and pulled out the key fob. I stood by the bedroom window, staring down into the parking lot, illuminated by dim yellow street lamps. My car sat beneath a tree, branches trembling in the breeze. I hit the unlock button, then the trunk release. It popped open with a faint mechanical click. I didn't move, just stared at it from 3 floors up, waiting for what? I didn't know. Nothing happened. Of course it didn't. But the question remained, why had Marcus lied? And not just about the meeting. There was something else. Something I couldn't name yet. The next morning, I noticed the floor mat on the passenger side of my car was dirty, grimy with that same reddish slush from the parking lot behind my office. I always wiped my shoes before stepping in, always kept my car clean. But there it was, a small mound of half-dried mud tucked into the corner like a secret. That mud had no reason to be there. Unless someone else had been inside. Someone who hadn't wiped their shoes. Someone in a gray coat. I thought of Marcus's boots yesterday. The faint red stains near the heel. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. He said he'd been at the office all day. But there's no mud like that near his building. Only concrete and blacktop. My pulse quickened. The boy's voice echoed again, louder this time. I saw him crawl in while you were inside. I didn't know what to believe, but for the first time I wanted to find out. Really find out. I spent the entire day at work pretending to read spreadsheets. Numbers blurred. Columns danced. I couldn't stop thinking about the mud. That awful reddish smear on my floor mat. It sat in my mind like a wound. I knew the exact shade, the exact texture. That kind of dirt only clung to tires and boots in the back, lot behind my office, where snowmelt pooled in rusty puddles. The only place I'd seen that mud recently was under Marcus's shoes. I checked the weather app. His office had no snow, no slush, just dry pavement. That detail, small, stupid, clawed at me. After lunch, I sat in a corner booth at the cafe across the street. I stared out the window while my tea cooled, untouched. The boy, the trunk, Marcus in the kitchen when he shouldn't have been, the dirt, and now the texts. That night, as I loaded the dishwasher, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Unknown number. He watches more than you know. That was it. No punctuation. No name. Just that one sentence. I froze, a dish still in my hand. The message sat on my screen like a dare. I read it 3 times. Then I looked toward the living room where Marcus was flipping through a home renovation magazine. He hadn't moved. Wasn't even looking at me. I deleted the message. Slowly. Carefully. Then I smiled like nothing had happened. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I waited until Marcus's breathing evened out, until his body sank fully into the mattress beside mine, before I slipped out of bed and tiptoed to the kitchen. My car keys sat on the counter. I walked out barefoot, pulling on Marcus's oversized hoodie. The wind was sharp. The air smelled like wet bark and distant chimney smoke. My breath clouded the glass as I opened the car and knelt beside the passenger seat. That same mound of rust-colored dirt stared back at me. I popped the glove compartment. Empty. Nothing strange. Then beneath the seat, where the upholstery met plastic, I saw something. A glint. Just barely. My heart stopped. It was a small black device, no bigger than a lighter. Square, sleek, matte plastic with a blinking green light. A tracker. A damn GPS tracker, wired to the underside of my seat. I sat back hard against the car door. My hands shook. My whole body was vibrating with something that wasn't quite fear yet, but close. Closer than it had ever been. Who put this here? I didn't have to ask. The next morning, I called Deborah. I need a favor, I said, and I need you to not ask questions until later. To her credit, she didn't hesitate. What kind of favor? You know your friend Jason? The security guy. She paused. Yeah, the one who helped my sister install nanny cams. I need him. By lunchtime, my car had a hidden camera, tucked into the dash behind the vent. Jason was discreet, professional, quiet. He didn't ask anything except where the recordings should go. I gave him a burner email, one I'd created in college and hadn't touched since. It felt almost poetic. Anything you're looking for in particular? He asked as he packed up. People, I said quietly. People who don't belong in my car. He gave me a long look, then nodded. That night, Marcus made Thai curry. He poured wine, lit a candle, made a playlist on Spotify. Everything was too perfect, too framed. I chewed rice and tofu and felt like I was chewing air. He talked about remodeling the bathroom, about maybe getting a dog in the summer. I nodded, smiled, didn't say a word about the camera, or the tracker, or the message. At one point he asked, "You okay? You seem a little distant." I almost answered, almost spilled everything, the whole ugly thing, the tracker, the dirt, the boy. But instead I said, just tired. He reached across the table and took my hand. His touch made my skin crawl. Later, after the dishes, after the lights dimmed, after we climbed into bed, I stayed awake with the blankets tucked tight around me, listening to his breath, watching the shadow of his body rise and fall beside mine. I whispered to the dark, "What are you hiding from me?" I didn't expect an answer, but deep down I already knew. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about control. And for the first time in my marriage, I wasn't sure which one of us was still pretending. It started with a photograph, not a hidden one, just a memory buried in pixels. That Friday afternoon, I was alone in the break room, sipping coffee gone cold when I opened my photo gallery. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I wanted to remind myself that life had once been ordinary, that Marcus had once been just my husband, not the man I now feared might be watching me through hidden devices. There were photos from a weekend hike, from our anniversary dinner, from that night we made pancakes at midnight and laughed at nothing. But as I scrolled, something gnawed at me. Every picture of Marcus fell off. His smiles too sharp, his eyes too careful. Had they always been like that? Or had I just never looked closely before? That night, I got home before him. The apartment was quiet, bathed in the soft orange glow of the setting sun. I walked into the bedroom and stared at the new wall clock, sleek, modern, silver-rimmed with clean black hands. "He'd bought it a month ago," said the old one ticked too loudly. I stepped closer, tilted my head. It ticked just fine. I stood on the bed and gently lifted it from the hook. The moment it came off the wall, I knew. It was too heavy. The back wasn't smooth. It had a panel with 4 tiny screws. My fingers trembled as I turned it over. There, tucked behind the clock mechanism, was a small lens, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. A hidden camera. In our bedroom. I dropped it. The clock hit the carpet face down with a muffled thud. I backed away like it had bitten me. Marcus had been watching me, not just tracking where I went, but recording me while I slept, while I dressed, while I thought I was alone. I stumbled into the bathroom, gripped the sink, and stared at myself in the mirror. My face looked pale, lips parted, eyes wide and unblinking. I looked like a woman in someone else's life. My own reflection scared me. He came home an hour later, humming again, carrying takeout, smiling like nothing had shattered. We sat at the table. He asked about my day. I lied. He joked about the slow driver on 13th Avenue. I laughed. I told him the bedroom clock had fallen off the hook. He said weird and never once asked if it broke. I waited until he slept. Then I opened my laptop and checked the hidden camera's footage Jason had sent earlier. I scrubbed through the day. Hours of silence, stillness, then movement. At 12:15 p.m., while I was across the street having lunch with Deborah, someone opened the driver's side door. A tall man in a gray coat. Marcus. He leaned in, looked around, reached beneath the seat, and placed something inside. I couldn't tell what. It was too fast, but it wasn't the tracker that had already been found. This was something else. My stomach turned. I jumped ahead on the video, fast-forwarding to 3 p.m. Another visitor, a woman. She was tall, slender, her long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore black sunglasses and a tailored coat. She approached the car with confidence, glanced both ways, then opened the door and ducked inside. She reached under the seat, where Marcus had placed whatever it was, and touched it, checked it, didn't remove it, then quietly slipped out and walked away, disappearing off camera. I paused the footage. My finger hovered over the spacebar. Who was she? What was she looking for? The next morning, I confronted Deborah. Not about Marcus. Not directly, but about the woman. Hey, said, this is going to sound strange, but have you seen anyone near my car this week? Anyone you didn't recognize? Deborah hesitated. Actually, yeah. Thursday morning. I came in early. Around 10. I saw a woman get into a car that looked like yours. She had long black hair, fancy coat, Not someone who works here. I swallowed. Was Marcus with her? Her eyes widened just a little. He was parked across the lot. Same time. I assumed they were together. Wait, Claire, what's going on? I didn't answer. Not fully. Just said, I think I'm being watched. She stared at me, then reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I believe you, she whispered. That night, I checked the footage again. The woman had been there twice. Once to inspect the tracker, and once earlier when she parked beside my car and lingered, staring at it through the glass. I didn't recognize her, but she clearly recognized me. And Marcus, he had erased any trace of the meeting from his phone. No texts, no calls, no calendar reminders. But he hadn't erased the look on his face when I mentioned a woman in a black coat later that night over dinner. Just casually, offhand. His fork paused for a second midair. Then he smiled. That's oddly specific, he said, laughing. What did you see one today? No, I said. Not today. But I saw the lie bloom behind his eyes like ink and water. And I knew, whatever this was, it wasn't just paranoia anymore. It was a performance. And I wasn't the only one in the audience. It was past midnight when I opened his closet. Marcus had been asleep for over an hour. I could tell by the rhythm of his breath and the way his limbs fell limp against the sheets. I slipped out of bed like a ghost and walked barefoot across the apartment, each floorboard creaking like it might betray me. The closet smelled like cedar and his cologne. Spiced citrus, clean, a scent I used to find comforting. Not tonight. I started at the top shelf. Just sweaters, polos, his old college hoodie. Then the drawers, socks, ties, belts, receipts from dry cleaning. Nothing suspicious, but something told me I hadn't looked deep enough. Then I saw it. A small wooden box, dark-stained, tucked behind a stack of folded sweatshirts. Polished, heavy, with a tiny brass clasp. My heart thudded, so loud I swore it echoed. I carried it to the bed and sat cross-legged on the floor. The box clicked open easily. Inside was a stack of papers, utility bills, insurance forms, meaningless things, and photographs. My fingers hesitated. Then I picked up the first one. It was me, exiting my office building, holding my keys, eyes squinting at the sun. The second, me again, in line at Trader Joe's, glancing down at my phone. Another, sitting with Deborah, laughing over sandwiches, unaware of any camera lens. My breath caught. They weren't photos I'd posed for. These weren't social media memories or vacation snapshots. They were surveillance. Dozens of them. Moments I never realized were being stolen. Days I thought were ordinary. I flipped through them faster now, me walking to my car, me at the cafe window, me adjusting my coat in the reflection of a storefront. Every image screamed the same thing. I was being watched. Not yesterday. Not last week. For months. And the person watching knew my patterns, my habits, my angles. Marcus. I clutched the stack to my chest and leaned back against the wall, heart hammering. I wanted to scream, cry, shake him awake and demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I carefully returned every photo to the box, closed the clasp and tucked it back where I found it. Then I slipped outside. The wind was sharp. I stood under the porch light with my phone, opened Jason's app, and reviewed the latest footage from the dash cam. 3:05 p.m. My car parked at work. A figure appeared on the screen. A woman. Tall. Long dark hair. The same one Deborah saw. The same one who checked under my seat. She opened the door again. Checked the tracker again. She didn't look rushed. She didn't look afraid. She looked methodical. Like this was routine. I went to work the next day and said nothing. I let Marcus kiss my cheek before he left. Let him tell me he'd be late because of a client dinner. I smiled and waved from the window. Then I drove to the parking lot behind Jason's workshop. He was already waiting, clipboard in hand. You found something? I asked. He nodded and gestured me inside. On his monitor, he showed me 2 video clips from earlier that week. The first, Marcus entering my car while I was at lunch. We'd already seen that. The second stopped me cold. Same day. Later that evening. Same woman. Only this time, she wasn't checking the tracker. She was checking under the passenger seat. And she left something there. Jason froze the frame, zoomed in. A small black rectangle, nearly identical to the tracker I'd found days ago. But this one, it was newer, sleeker, different model. They're piggybacking, Jason muttered. Whoever they are, they're doubling the surveillance. I couldn't breathe. How many devices are in my car? I asked. Jason looked at me carefully. I found three. Three trackers, all transmitting location data, all placed by people I thought I knew or hadn't even met. I left the workshop feeling like my body no longer belonged to me, like my every step was borrowed, tracked, archived. That night, as Marcus made dinner and talked about a hiking trip for next month, I stared at his hands. How steady they were, how carefully he chopped garlic. I wondered if those same hands held the camera, the box, the devices. I nodded when he offered wine. I smiled when he asked about my day. And when we crawled into bed and he wrapped an arm around me, I stared into the dark and thought, I am sleeping beside a man who studies me like a stranger. I am part of a play I never agreed to. And something tells me the final act hasn't even begun. At 6:12 a.m., I woke to the sound of the shower running. Marcus was already in the bathroom. The scent of his shampoo drifted down the hallway, clean, sharp, antiseptic. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart thudding. My mind returned to the footage, the woman, the devices, the photos, the camera in our bedroom, every piece of it circling like vultures, closing in. I reached for his phone. It was on his nightstand, screen face up. For months it had no password, but now it did. I tried his birthday, our wedding date, my birthday, nothing. I was about to put it down when I noticed a notification, a preview of a text message from a contact saved only as ZK. I didn't have time to read it all, just a glimpse. ZK, everything's ready. 10 a.m., don't forget. Then the screen locked. I placed it back as the water shut off. Over breakfast, Marcus was all smiles. He made omelets, toast, orange juice with pulp. We sat across from each other like two strangers playing a game of domestic bliss. He told me he might be home late. A new project, potential clients, same old lines. But I watched his face when he said 10 a.m. He didn't flinch. He didn't blink. Too perfect. Too smooth. After he left, I called Deborah. There's someone named ZK, I said. Do you know anyone by those initials? She hesitated. ZK? No, not off the top of my head. I paused. He's meeting them today. 10 o'clock. I don't know where or why, but I think it matters. You want me to follow him? She asked. No, I want to follow the devices. She didn't argue. That afternoon, Jason sent me the latest report. One of the GPS trackers had just pinged outside a cafe 2 blocks from my office. I drove there with my hands sweating against the steering wheel. Inside the cafe, there was only one table near the back that had a clear view of the street. And sitting there was the woman, the one from the footage. She wore sunglasses again, dark lipstick and a fitted coat. A coffee cup sat in front of her, untouched. I stayed in my car, parked across the street, barely breathing. At exactly 10:03, Marcus arrived. He slid into the seat across from her, back to the window. I couldn't see his face, but I knew it was him. I didn't need to hear the conversation. I already knew too much. I left. That evening, Marcus came home with flowers, pink peonies. He set them in a vase without a word, then smiled at me like nothing had happened, like he hadn't spent the morning meeting someone he never told me about, following a plan I hadn't been allowed to see. At dinner, he told me about a new contract, a chance to travel, to start over somewhere quieter. Wouldn't that be nice, he asked. Just you and me. away from all this noise. I nodded, but inside I was screaming. After he fell asleep, I took the phone again. Still locked, still hiding everything. So I did the only thing left. I turned to the camera. I reviewed the car footage from that day. Watched as Marcus opened the passenger door after the cafe. Watched as he reached beneath the seat and removed the second tracker. Removed it, meaning he knew I knew, or someone had tipped him off. Then, at 2:14 p.m., the woman returned. She opened the door, glanced under the seat, frowned. She knew it was gone, so she left something else. A note, folded, left between the seat and the center console. I ran outside barefoot, unlocked the car, and felt around the crevice with my fingers. It was still there, a scrap of paper, typed, one line. He is not who you think, and neither am I. I sat in the driver's seat, heart racing, the note in my lap, and tried to breathe. This wasn't just about obsession anymore. This was bigger, deeper, twisted in ways I hadn't even begun to untangle. That night, as Marcus lay beside me, breathing softly in the dark, I whispered to the ceiling. I know. Not all of it. Not yet. But enough. I reached for his phone again, not to unlock it this time, but to place it exactly where it had always been. I was done searching, because now I wasn't the one being hunted. Now I was watching. I had cameras. I had backups. I had questions that only answers would fear. And Marcus, he was still sleeping soundly beside me, still pretending, still believing I hadn't changed. But I had. I smiled into the dark and whispered again, this time not to the ceiling, but to myself. Let's see what happens at 10.